and Aram for the work here that they've done. This has been an excellent conference. I know how much work this has been and how much, like, this is a full year preparation. So they're look at this. They're busy right now. They're still working on this. But thank you very much, Mike and Aram. Yeah. And thanks to the operations team for all the behind the scenes work. And thank all of you for sticking around till the very end. This is one of the last sessions here. There's some awards that are going to be announced at the end, but this is the last full hour-long moderating session. And one good thing about this, like I'm feeling like this, I'm pretty full. This has been an excellent couple of days. And we're not going to present really any new information, any new data. This is going to be 1 hour of kind of sitting back and synthesizing and consolidating the learning, and a lot of discussion. So this might be a time if you've had some burning questions or items for discussion that we'll definitely have some time during the hour to talk about the things that you want to talk about. We have divided it up. There's four panelists. You see them up there, and there's more information about them on the Whova app. Can we take this down and bring Jennifer up? We do have one person that's joining online, Jennifer Hume. We have Catherine Clark and Laura Frajo. And what we thought that we would do in wrapping this up was to try to highlight at least one take-home message that we have taken away from the conference. We'll talk about that. We'll kind of bounce some ideas off each other, open it to you. And then at the very end, we're going to talk, we'll kind of present a wish list. Where do we want to go? Like, what do we want to come next? So that's everything we've got planned. Other than that, it's like a free-for-all. We'll see where this goes. So I got the mic. I'm gonna start. So one of the things that has been really clear to me, and that I'm going to be taking away, actually has made me very uncomfortable with the title of this session, the cross-pillar discussion. So it's been really loud and clear that it's not enough just to go across, right? We need more integration, we need more synthesis, we need more consolidation, and we need more collaboration and teamwork. We heard from, one of the most powerful talks, Stephanie Jones, yesterday shared her personal experience with silos in care, a really dramatic example of one of the problems that can arise when we're too siloed and not working together. Hinton talked about problems with fragmentation of services, healthcare services. Even Jill Cameron talked about the need for more family collaboration. So I'm like, I don't think it's enough to go across. I do think that we need to integrate and we need to synthesize. I'm also a little bit uncomfortable just with the pillars. So pillars, the 4 CIHR pillars. And it's really clear after David Keegan and Matthew's talk this afternoon, David, his quote, "Get rid of the hubris in our healthcare system," right? Like these pillars are not enough. We need to go elsewhere. We need to bring in the other. We need to acknowledge other ways of knowing, other ways of doing, and give them serious time as well. So that's my take-home message. We agreed to go just in the order that is in the program. So next up, I'm going to ask Jennifer, who is joining us online. Let's test the audio and make sure this works.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great. So I'm here. I'm a physician. I work in the emergency department, and I also work with people who use substances. But I'm here as a person with lived experience. And we just heard from Angela Chung, and I think it's anyway. She's my doctor, so this is really a small world. And I've been so blown away and so impressed by the last 2 days. But one thing that I really take away is that like the basic research is super exciting. Like we're at a very, very exciting tipping point in terms of knowing how to have targeted therapies for long COVID. We heard from Dr. Ryu as the opener yesterday, and they described antifibrin antibodies that might actually be entering a phase 1 trial with the potential to neutralize the inflammatory domain of fibrin. We heard from the lovely pediatric researcher who described a medication that is a zonulin antagonist that binds tight junctions. This also sounded really, really promising. I love that she talked about pediatric patients between the ages of 7 and 50. So I would potentially be able to enroll in her trial. And we heard from Dr. Banerjee reviewing the broad spectrum antivirals that are in development that might be targeting multiple replication steps, very similar to HIV antiretrovirals. And so this was like all very exciting, but I think what we also are seeing, exactly as you describe, is really fragmented care. And you know, I'm someone who receives an email probably every couple of days from someone who's in complete distress and really overwhelmed and extremely sick and isolated. And I wanted to speak a little bit to that. Like, I think we heard about these models of care from Quebec and BC, and and I think it actually really pointed out that something is better than nothing. That there's a lot of value even in simply having access to virtual care as a single point of care in BC, and that there's a lot of good in being able to share pathways with caretakers of people with long COVID. Um, those specialists feed back information to primary care providers and family physicians, which can be really powerful in terms of changing clinical practice. And then just advocating for disability and disability coverage for people who would qualify. And so, you know, it really just struck me like in Ontario, we really have nothing. It's a very dismal sort of situation, and we're struggling. And one of the things that I've been sort of on, I've been really since I got sick 3 years ago, I've really insisted on communicating that there's tons of things that we can do with the information and the data that we have now, you know, without waiting for the targeted therapies that are coming down the line. I think Dr. Raj had made that point yesterday that, you know, someone had said, oh, we have no FDA approved treatments or therapies. And they were like, no, we have a lot that we can do now, right? Like we have evidence-based therapy for POTS. We have evidence-based, you know, screening for ME/CFS, and resting and pacing really is super important, right? This really does change whether people get better or not. We have more and more data that we can use, right? We can use heart rate variability to understand if people are going into a crash and be able to advise on resting and pacing in that moment. We have a ton of evidence-based treatments for POTS, and we have a ton of off-label treatments that people are using, whether or not the healthcare community, you know, has, or whether we as researchers have provided the evidence for it. And I guess I wanted to just point out, like, you know, how we talked about how the biomedical model functions. You know, we really need, like, physicians are desperate for certainty, and this is very much sort of part of the like we equate disease legitimacy often with abnormal labs, abnormal imaging, molecular findings, but we don't. There, Angela Chung just said, you know, there are no tests really that are available to the general public at this point to get a diagnosis of long COVID. So it's really important that we understand what we're up against. And I think very similar to what Dr. David Keegan was saying, bring really concrete solutions. And so I think it's important to that knowledge translation gap is what has stood out to me the most in the last 2 days. That we need to bring to clinicians the fact that everyone can be screened for POTS, everyone can be screened for ME/CFS, and yes, to listen to patients. And when you're able to do that, then people can really go down that road and start getting better, start trying these off-label and on-label treatments, which have really made me better, right? Like I'm speaking really from my own personal experience rather than my professional experience. You know, we're up against some structural and cognitive biases in medicine where we really want tests and we really want treatments. And I think we can think of many examples in the past. Fibromyalgia is a good example. You know, fibromyalgia didn't really exist until we realized that SNRIs might be helpful. The stigma around HIV only got better when ARVs came online. Um, what other examples do we have? Uh, ME/CFS is a great example, right? Where it was only when we started to show the research got better and started to show the abnormalities in ME/CFS that we started to realize that this is not the yuppie flu, and this is a real condition. So maybe I'll stop there, but those are my reflections from the last 2 days.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. I think that one other highlight for me related to what you were speaking about in the discrepancy in service delivery was the Atlantic meetup this morning. Those of you that attended, that was a real highlight. And it was like a real step towards finding solutions and working together, sharing information, sharing resources. So congratulations for putting that together during this conference as well. Next up, we're going to hear from Catherine Clark, who also was one of our CBC interviewees today. Congratulations to that. Maybe everybody give her a good big hand for talking to CBC in the media.
Thanks, guys. I hate public speaking. I'm a family doctor here in St. John's. I'm certainly not an expert in COVID. I came here to this conference to learn. So I'll be speaking today kind of just from like personal experience in clinic, and I guess strictly, based on a family physician's experience here in St. John's, Newfoundland. My struggles with this might not correlate with some of the other family physicians across Canada, but yeah, so I just wanted to point that out. But I think my biggest take-home message from this conference was definitely, I think Stephanie's talk yesterday really impacted everyone. I mean, she had a standing ovation here. And the biggest thing that I took from that was just that, as a clinician, I do tend to see sometimes that long COVID isn't bought in by every single specialist out there. Like, not everyone believes in long COVID. And maybe you don't as a family doctor. I do. I'm here for that reason. But you can listen to a patient and you can validate their symptoms and their experiences. And I think that's what Stephanie was basically begging for, like just someone to listen, someone to hear her. And I think we can all do that. So hopefully, if nothing else, that you can just like validate your patients and you can care for them in other ways.
Super important. Thank you very much, Catherine. Next, we're going to have Laura Frazier.
Hello? Excellent. Okay, I'm going to be following along with something that I've written at this time of day. It's a little bit easier for me to speak clearly this way. I'm an occupational therapist with a small telehealth practice in Quebec, and I support my clients who are living with complex chronic illness. I'm also a doctoral student at McGill University, and I spent 2 years with the understanding that long COVID was a part of my complex medical history. That changed this past spring when I learned that my worsening health with every subsequent COVID infection was the unmasking of an autoinflammatory disorder called Yao syndrome. That's YAO for anyone who's interested. I was disabled by the condition for 6 years before the symptoms became severe enough to meet the diagnostic criteria. And when I started treatment in September, my fatigue, PM, and dysautonomia resolved within 48 hours of my first dose. I think it really speaks volumes to the experiences of those with long COVID, that even with my lifelong dependency now on this daily immunosuppressive medication, I am a unicorn who had a really sudden and dramatic recovery. I have 3 quick takeaways to share, and one is the emotional experience I had this afternoon, hearing the honesty that was brought forth by the panel on the expanding burden of long COVID. I have never had my clinician-associated traumatization described in this way, and I believe that we need to name a problem before we can tame a problem, and I can see that we are starting to name these issues. From the basic science and keynote speeches, I'm really excited to communicate these developments with my patients and my peers in my community. We're so desperate to understand the pathophysiology of our of our conditions, because it's incredibly healing to understand the causes of our conditions when our symptoms have so often and for so long been psychologized. As far as my practice and advocacy, there was a moment that really stood out in Dr. McKay's presentation yesterday on addressing patient priorities by asking about aspects of their conditions that they are treating with supplements and alternative health practices. It's absolutely brilliant. Most of my clients are neurodivergent, and they have the associated issues perceiving and communicating their bodily sensations. And so asking them about the aspects of their health and function that they're addressing through supplements, alternatives, and I'm thinking maybe even DIY adaptive equipment, will really open pathways to communication to better understand their priorities and help me co-create attuned intervention plans from there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks to all of our panelists. Excellent take-home messages. We now wanted to open it to you, the audience now, if there are thoughts that you've had over the last couple of days. What are your take-home messages? What are the key things that you're leaving here today with?
Wait for someone to come to the microphone. One of the things that I was hoping to hear about in some of the topics today, and an activity of daily living that's often left out of research, is no one has spoken about sexual health. I think that's a very important occupation in all of our lives, and for many of us, that is underrepresented in research as an activity of daily living.
All right.
First off, as a patient, thank you. You're giving us hope. I spend so long on our Facebook group when people go, nobody's, no, and saying good science takes time. You have to apply for the grant, and that takes time, and the whole steps. We're getting results now. After all this going into the sausage maker, we're starting to get some proto sausages out of it. And those sausages look like hope to me. And I am so sick of hearing long COVID. It dictates every moment of my life. People talk about mindfulness. I have to think if I'm going to walk across a room and what it'll cost me. And all of you and all you're doing give us hope. We have concrete hope now. There are hints of what will work. So please keep at it. Please listen to your patients. First and foremost, the first statement needs to be, I believe you. Because so many of us have been told, weird. And another question you can ask if your patient trusts you is, how often are you able to get a bath or a shower every week? Because you may be surprised that for some of us, it's once or twice. And we spend a lot of time trying to pass. So thank you so much for what you're doing. Thank you for people who've told us their experiences. Thank you for the people who worked hard to put together this conference. I know how much work it is. And thank you to the clinicians and researchers who keep trying to make the world better for us. We appreciate it beyond belief.
Thank you, Lorraine. I totally agree. I was very excited to see the results that Angela presented here this afternoon from that the trial, the adaptive trial. I know how much work and energy, like years of work, to build the infrastructure, to get the team, to get the approvals in place, all for one little slide sometimes, one result. But it's so important, and that knowledge is so incredibly important. So thanks very much, Lorraine. Next.
Hi there, my name is Kathleen Banks. I'm a health systems researcher at Boston University. I'm also someone living with long COVID. I have been to quite a few long COVID conferences in the US, and this is the first one that I've seen speak so comprehensively about models of care. And I'm so grateful to all the work that's being done here, especially when it's about patient-centered models of care, compassionate care. What we saw today that's happening across the different provinces, it's just amazing. And I'm so grateful and excited to see what comes out of it. One thing that really struck with me today is, and I've seen in other places too, is this continuing conversation of the connection between research, the big R, as someone was saying earlier today, and what's happening in clinical practice. And I think we talk about translation of knowledge to be from the research to the point of service. And I think that we really have an opportunity here, being in a once in a lifetime event, where we can look at clinical practice and see how quickly we can take those lessons learned up to the big R of research. I saw a lot of it here today and what's been going on. One example is at Tulane University in Louisiana. They noticed so many people were coming in with connective tissue disorder in their long COVID clinic that they started just referring them directly to their connective tissue disorder lab. And they wrote about it in a scientific journal. And if there's any way that that can continue and we can see more clinical case studies and others being written about so that we can get that visibility to the big R, I think that would be great. So thank you all so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I would like to talk a bit about the models of care. I mean, we had some great presentations today about the Quebec model, BC model. There was not a lot about the Alberta model. That's kind of because our model imploded. The clinics were basically shut down, and a couple of months later, it was transitioned into a virtual care model. But it's reaching just a fraction of the people that the earlier approach did. I'm really interested, and maybe I'll pose this to our panelists. You're all working in various areas of healthcare, different roles. Is there something about the model of care in which you work currently that could be improved to make your life as a clinician better? Is there something that could be done differently to help you out?
Sure, I'll start. So I'm here in St. John's, and there is no real model for COVID here. There's no like COVID teams. We have Dr. Anise. So that's basically it. And I just feel like COVID is kind of out of sight, out of mind right now. So no one's masking, no one's getting tested for COVID. And I even find when I ask patients, like, did you have a COVID infection? And they're like, oh, that was years ago, or because they haven't been testing. They have no idea. So they're not tying their symptoms to COVID. And then I also find too, it's a difficult diagnosis sometimes because the definition for long COVID isn't always clear. I mean, someone said, it's was mentioned a few times already in this conference. There's multiple different definitions. And there's, 200 plus symptoms. So when you're coming into your family physician's office, you have a 15-minute appointment and you have all of these very broad, non-specific symptoms. It's going to be a long time to get that worked up. And then the healthcare system is broken. It takes 3 months to get an urgent ultrasound. It takes weeks to get blood work done. I can't even order an MRI here. It's just difficult. So yeah, there are a lot of barriers to getting a timely diagnosis and helping these patients sometimes. I don't know if it's different anywhere else. Go ahead, Jen. I feel like you want to talk.
No, I think it's a nightmare everywhere. We also have nobody or nothing. We have Angela Chung, who's been doing this kind of work off the side of her desk, really. And we have no pathways to care. And so it's actually been quite interesting because, early on, I connected with someone with Cornerstone Physio is doing long COVID physio and has been just kind of like the only player in town. And they're able to provide virtual care for everybody in Ontario. So, basically everyone that we see or make the diagnosis with in the emergency department will refer to Cornerstone Physio because they are it. And it's been very helpful because at least they can they can virtually make the diagnosis of ME/CFS. They can virtually make the diagnosis of POTS. Right. Which they did with me, they were like, lie down, stand up, and measure your heart rate at every minute. And then they can do some of the rehab pieces that go along with that. and provide support for people's disability, but it is generally a disaster. I do provide virtual care, emergency care to Nova Scotia as well. And I can tell you that, I've made the diagnosis of long COVID virtually as an emergency room doctor in Nova Scotia. And it's, again, there are no pathways in a lot of the provinces and territories, and we're really stuck.
I have a lot of emotions around having a private practice and there being such an incredible paywall and barrier to accessing my care. And so I am a very active in peer support spaces. So my most active role is as a moderator for a community with around 2,000 people, with 300 contributing members on a regular basis for hypermobile related conditions and connective tissue disorders. And that is where I learned to take care of myself. And it was through other people's experiences. My dream is having something along the lines of other institutions that we have in Canada, like Kids Help Phone. I want a QR code in our waiting rooms that will hook you up with a patient mentor who is ready by their phone in different time zones, any time of day, to say, hey, I'm here, I'm listening, tell me the whole story. Let's bring it together. What points are we going to tell the doctor? Maybe we should word it this way. I have that help in my phone. Anytime I go to a doctor's appointment, I have people providing emotional support. I have people helping me break down what my priorities are. And I want that care that I get through my peer relations to be available to anybody who needs it. And so I think developing infrastructure like that for peer-to-peer support with like other volunteer organizations that exist in Canada and other support spaces.
Thanks. That's a really great idea. I think great ideas and advice from all of you for the health service researchers in the room. Things that we could take back and advocate for with our provincial healthcare systems and the powers that be, I suppose. Let's go to the microphone again. Okay, online. Susan.
Thanks, Doug. So this is an observation, I think, and perhaps a key message from one of the online participants. The emphasis on listening to patients was great, and I suspect this was just a phrasing thing, but I would highlight that not believing in long COVID is not an option that falls within the range of competent medical practice in 2025, any more than practicing phrenology or claiming vaccines don't work. So just a comment.
Thank you.
I think that happens though with some other clinicians. Like I think Dr. Keegan kind of put up some quotes earlier, and that was from a couple of years ago. But I still think that there are people out there who do not believe that long COVID exists, despite this research. I mean, clearly there's changes at the molecular level. We've seen that all throughout the symposium, but I think there's still pushback. But I agree with whoever made that comment. Absolutely. It's not acceptable.
This time I attended a conference that helped give context to the symptoms I had been living with and had been psychologized my whole life. There was a lot of relief, and there was so much anger that I had to process, learning that the research had been done, that the science was there, and yet it's Russian roulette when I go out to a doctor's appointment, whether or not I'm going to be believed. And I think that's still a reality in post-COVID condition, long COVID, and so many other women's health issues.
Susan, I see that there's a raised hand. Is that something that you would handle, or do we allow them to?
Oh, yeah, we're focusing on the Q&A in the Ahuva app, so I'm not sure where the raised hand is.
So we would encourage you to type your questions into the Ahuva app, those of you online joining virtually. We'll go to another comment here in the room.
Okay, thank you. So for people who don't know yet, I came from the Netherlands over here, which I thought was a long trip, but apparently coming from Western Canada to here is the same. But it was a mental barrier to come across, and I'm very happy that I came here. It's incredible to see all of you together and to talk to very many people, to the Long COVID Web team. I'm actually involved in the Dutch Long COVID Web, and it's incredible to see what hard work has been done here. And I wanted to say thank you. And I go home very inspired. So yeah.
Thank you. And Stacy.
Yeah, I'm a little bit delayed because you guys were talking about just health systems in general and how do we get people to pay attention to what's going on in the world of long COVID and society-wide. And the session in the right after lunch on population health was really emotional. I caught myself teary-eyed several times. And I just wanted to ask, is there a health economist in the room? Is there anyone who studies how health impacts the economy large scale? And I'm wondering if that's probably where we need to go with this, because we have a shortage of teachers in this province. We have a shortage of doctors. We have a shortage of nurses. We have a shortage of community care. We have a shortage of everything. And I mean, we have also a large portion of the population that is going undiagnosed because they do not know what long COVID is. So that's my, I'm just wondering if anyone's making those connections, and maybe there's some people in this room that do know about that I don't. And I would love to know, and I would love to connect with them if they're available. So thanks.
So we do have health economists in the network. Ellen Rafferty is actually, I think that there was a poster here presented about the nursing workforce. So they are attempting to model the impact of long COVID on the nursing workforce and modeling various solutions related to accommodated work and that type of thing. But really, it's difficult work, and I call the health economists unicorns because they're so rare. If you can find one, you want to kind of grasp onto them and work with them. But there's so much work outside the nursing workforce, broader healthcare, education, so many other of those frontline professions that were influenced in the early days of the pandemic. Thanks. That's a great point.
Can I ask a question?
Great.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jen.
It was really a question for us as a long COVID community. I was part of the CAN PCC guideline creation for the prevention of long COVID. And the findings, like what we came out with, was pretty good. Like I won't speak to the other CAN PCC groups, but what I'm finding is that the knowledge translation gap is so wide. No one seems to know that metformin, Paxlovid, ketogenic diet, but we didn't study the other dietary interventions because they hadn't been rigorously studied, but that these would be recommendations to prevent long COVID if you get COVID in the first place. There's been very little uptake of like mouthwash. We didn't actually study nasal sprays, but I just wonder, there's this massive knowledge translation gap, as we were talking about a bit before. And I guess I just wanted to ask why. Like, what do we think we need to do next to really help communicate this to the general public and to healthcare? Because I don't think it's healthcare providers that need to know this. I think it's the general public. And I think I'm stepping away from these 2 days being like, why? What are we missing?
Let me thank you, the organizers, to organizing long COVID. I'm a private sector. We really believe in bringing targeted therapy. We really believe in bringing precision biomarkers for the age indications. We have said the reason I stand up to talk about the health economics. You have the data. Only thing to put together. For example, the presenter who gave the mathematical model in 2028 is going to go. Every time we get infected on PEI, there's a new variant going on. Every time the COVID infected, there's a potential for the long COVID. So you can put all the mathematical calculation and to see where we're going to be 2028. And Dr. Angela Chang did the 1% GDP globally. That government understand the number, right? So we actually can model. I understand I'm a scientist, but we are doing this health economics for our own projects, right? So it is you have the data, because 1% of the GDP, I think, is more than that, but 400 million. These are productive citizens, but we had to put all of those calculations together, but I think we have the data. I think if you want, and also the PHAC publication, right? That's also. So I'm sure you know this, Government of Canada, the PHAC and Health Canada and ISET, they are in communication. So you have a PHAC angle, the PHAC put a publication. So you have, one has to communicate with this federal. Fortunately, unfortunately, the healthcare coming under the provincial jurisdiction, right? So we have to still communicate with the federal as well as the province. I think this is doable, but in this conference is very valuable. You have the data. If you put together with all the caliber of scientists and the clinicians, we will have a significant impact. Thank you very much for doing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I can answer your question, Jennifer. Basically, we are failing in medicine in terms of communicating with the non-medical public, okay? It's like we're still using faxes to communicate. That's how basic we are. 80% of the online community gets their education and news from social media. And we have not encompassed that space. That space has been encompassed by the disinformers and the misinformers. It's why I set up Long COVID the Answers. To give you an example, we have hundreds of people visiting our website. We have millions of people looking at our social media posts. People are absorbing information by looking at 1 minute and 30-second clips of medical information. I could not believe it when I saw it myself. We thought, okay, we'll just show those clips on social media and it will draw them to the website so that they can look at in-depth information. They are just trying to absorb stuff on TikTok in 1 minute and 30-second clips. As medics, we have to get our information into that space. At the moment, we're sending out all this brilliant research in hard-to-read medical journals, which even I struggle to decipher sometimes, and I'm clinically trained to do so. So that is the knowledge gap. That's how we reach the public. Look at Ozempic. I've repeated this so many times, the Ozempic effect. For 15 to 20 years, from initial trials on the GLP-1 agonist, we were campaigning as internal physicians for Ozempic to be registered as a weight loss medication, okay? 15 to 20 years, and the government ignored us and the medical profession didn't take much notice either. You get a movie star and a social media influencer talking about Ozempic on social media, and overnight, my inbox is full from JAMA and whatever about the value of these medications. So that's what we need to do. And then we won't have a measles epidemic, and we'll have more people aware of long COVID, and we'll have protections from SARS-CoV-2.
I think part of this goes back to Simon's presentation earlier this morning too, like funding. And the GLP ones are a great example. I mean, like, if you watch TV, you are seeing the O commercial, right? Ask your doctor. It doesn't even say what it is, I don't think. But everyone knows that it's Ozempic. If you watch hockey, you know, the intermissions, it's presented to you by Ozempic. So I think funding is definitely it's major here. And if there was more funding, then maybe more people would care, or at least it would be, you know, in the media and the social media a bit more.
I do think it's a really difficult problem, and I've done research in kind of my other research life in the area of low back pain and social marketing, and it is challenging to get a message across, no matter how many ways you provide it, especially when there's conflicting messages coming from other partners and other actors. I would say that if you haven't looked at it yet, take a look at the Long COVID website. There are lots of excellent information there. They are active on some of the social media channels. I don't know if we're on TikTok. Maybe we need to TikTokify that, and the CanPCC guy. That might be another way to get our information out. Yeah. Susan, I see you standing. Is there another comment online, or?
Yes, it's more of a question, just from all of the experience in research or even clinical practice. What tips and strategies might you have for really, truly authentic patient engagement, where people are very involved in research and can influence priorities, the conduct of research, the importance of outcomes? Just wondering about collective wisdom there.
Any thoughts from the panel?
That can be hard to navigate sometimes, depending on where they're getting their research from. And then sometimes I find, yeah, if the research isn't quality research, those conversations can definitely be difficult. I don't know, Jen, if you have anything else to add to that.
While Jen's volume is coming back on, grounding myself again. Yes, so I think when it comes to getting involved in research, emailing local universities is a good way to find out who is studying the condition that you want to get involved in. Going to clinical trials websites where they have everything written down and doing blanket emails. Don't just choose one. Do the filtering later on, write a template email and let everybody know that you're interested in getting involved, not only as a participant within the research, but as an engaged patient expert at the organization level as well. And once you're involved in one, it will cascade. So that's how I came to be involved with Long COVID Web, was I got involved with Can PCC, and that came from contacting a university.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think there's two levels of involvement as a partner in the research as well, and a member of the team, as well as being a participant and contributing your data to the study. And just to mention that we do have in our trusted resources section on Long COVID Web, we do have a space where there's some resources for people interested in getting involved in research. And also we have another part of our website where researchers can post any studies where they're recruiting. So absolutely welcome any and all studies. Once you have your ethics approval, let us know. Thanks.
I think that we've lost Jennifer. Maybe she signed off. Is she there? All right, well, let's go to the microphone. Another comment here.
Hi, thank you. So we've heard several reiterated things in the last couple of days. In the context of my question, we've heard healthcare is broken. That's real. It's provincially mandated, also real. The guidelines are a start. The Can PCC guidelines are a start. I'm wondering, where do you think we should go legislation-wise on a federal level, if it's possible, given that healthcare is provincially mandated? And what would a federal strategy take?
What do you think? Let's ask you. Flip it right back at you. Do you have thoughts?
I ask because this is what I'm doing my master's research in, and one of the places that I've found is a landmark case around chronic fatigue syndrome that a woman, I believe in Alberta, filed for workplace accommodations, long-term disability, was denied, took it to the Alberta Supreme Court and won. That's sort of where my mind is at in terms of filing a lawsuit with the federal government, but legislating from the bench is an option, but I'm wondering what alternatives there might be.
The cost of legislating from the bench on the individuals with an energy impairment and PEM is so extreme. I can imagine the expenditures of energy and the shifts in baseline that went along with that win. MECFS, I think Long COVID could probably join them, but they're rated as having the highest unmet health needs in Canada. Legislatively, I think it's really complex. And from where I'm sitting today, I wonder how much of that is going to trickle down into patient care. And so perhaps there is a top-down and a bottom-up of these community-based initiatives as well.
Thank you.
But that is a really interesting question.
There's one example answer to this question.
Yeah.
I do understand the federal, I do understand the province is responsible for the healthcare. Good example, we had pandemic, right? Federal government actually put the bill for the vaccines, and they're given to the provinces. So who actually funders are federal government. So the idea is, I mean, rather than legal action, some of the things you are doing here and intellectuals and the clinicians weight you have it here, and you should bring this to the federal's attention, which is very straightforward. You have a PHAC report is available. Health Canada is, they can ask government, ask the PHAC, report is published. And Angela Chang said, talk about the 1% that Canadian government is concerned about the GDP. And you have Health Canada, who actually bombarded with all of those these COVID-19 projects that you are doing. And plus, the end of the day, what you concluded, there is no targeted therapy for long COVID. There is no definite biomarker for long COVID. These are, you can package this together, have a conversation with the federal government. That's, you have the man, you have the intellectual, you have the credibility, you have it. So only communicate as one voice to the federal government, and that will allow province to take care. They can have a conversation, because if we stipulate 2028, this is the potential. They understand these models, right? Government understand the models.
Thank you. One more comment, and then we're going to wrap it up.
Okay, yeah, I was told I needed to tell this. It's some information about the Netherlands. There was actually a lawsuit too, where the government agency that provides benefits for people that are sick was legally addressed, and the patients won. So maybe that's information that's useful for you too. You can contact me if you want more detailed information, because I don't have this right now, but I can look them up.
Okay, well, thank you. We said that we were going to start with some of our take-home messages, and then we were going to end with a wish list. Where do we hope to be in a year or a couple of years down the road from here? So I think that I'm going to start, and then I think we'll go in reverse order from how we did it before. I have a really simple wish list. I think that we've got an excellent national research network in place. We have excellent infrastructure. We have mechanisms for doing trials and basic science and like across all these pillars. It shouldn't be as difficult as it is now to get ethical and administrative approval in many of our sites. I think that we need a conjoint national reciprocal ethics agreement. So if we get something approved in Alberta, it shouldn't take 12 to 18 months to get it approved in Ontario or elsewhere. And that doesn't seem that difficult to me, but I'm happy to talk about that, but that's my wish list. I think that we have like tremendous power to do excellent research across this country, and that's one of the biggest barriers right now.
So
I opened up a can of worms, looks like.
No,
Satish.
the ethics thing is happening. So there's a group called ACT that's also CHR funded.
Yeah,
And that's what that's been their project for the last year and a bit. There's a group that's formed. Some provinces have signed on. There was actually a competitive process about how to do it, and they chose one based out of Clinical Trials Ontario, but with a broader mandate. So there are a couple of provinces that still haven't signed on to it, but ultimately, it's going to depend on CIHR probably mandating its use, mainly through universities, right? The cudgel they have is if they say you have to use this, otherwise you don't get CIHR funding or Tri-Council funding, every university will fall in line. But that's expected to happen. But to be clear, they're not actually worried about IRM's project, right? This is actually for Pfizer or AstraZeneca or JN Nova, right? I mean, when you have an industry thing, they don't want the pharmaceutical industry to walk away. So that is happening, and it will likely actually be in place within the next year or two.
Well, you're making my wish come true. Thank you, Satish.
I'm glad you mentioned, actually, we are working with the ACT exactly for that reason.
Okay, great.
Because you are absolutely right. There is no, for example, if there is a health emergency situation, everybody knows Government of Canada created Health Emergency Response Canada, it's called HERC. It's very similar to BARDA, right? We are not going to get BARDA money. So we are preparing here. So if there is a health emergency, next week, we don't have this one single mechanism. We are working towards that. Actually, as mentioned, ACT, PJ Devereaux as leading this initiative. You're absolutely right. If there's one ethic approval is good enough for the entire country.
Yeah, that's a dream. Laura.
We did speak about one of my wishes already in terms of really tapping and creating an infrastructure for paid peer support work. I think there are a lot of people doing a lot of invisible work supporting patient communities that are dismissed from the healthcare system that are doing it for free. But as a patient with such a long diagnostic delay, I found myself in many communities of other clinically invisible illnesses that are often met with disbelief and disregard in healthcare encounters. And so that had me thinking today about so many of the commonalities that I've heard between some of the aspects that were discussed here and those that are common in ME/CFS, fibromyalgia, hypermobility spectrum disorder, other post-viral or chronic viral illnesses, as well as functional neurological disorder. I think that a convergent message in all of these spaces is we've heard again and again these past 2 days, it's really important that we're being met with empathy and validation as a minimum requirement for care. So I see cooperation between these diagnoses as a potential way for knowledge mobilization to be improved, for perhaps pooled funding and even economized time of the healthcare workers we're trying to reach. If there's cooperation between patient organizations to bring these messages and training to prevent the ongoing epistemic injustice so that we can start putting medical gaslighting behind us.
Thank you. Catherine.
Okay, I'll say that I wish here in Newfoundland that we had some more interdisciplinary teams like we've seen from some of the other provinces, because we really don't have anything here now. And it definitely causes delays with diagnosis and access to patient care. I will also say I'm very excited about the last talk that we had, because I mean, I was looking at the PCC guidelines online, and as a clinician, the way that it's written is it's nicely displayed here in on the phone. But if you look at each guideline, it will say something like certainty of evidence, and then it gives the first dot and it says very low. And then the recommended strength is an X and says conditional, or you might say a plus and say conditional, but the evidence is low basically on all of these. However, it looks like from the last talk that there's a lot coming down the pipeline now with to bolster the evidence and probably increase the confidence in the certainty of the evidence. So I'm excited about that, because I think we'll see more uptake with these guidelines with that evidence upcoming.
Thank you. And Jennifer.
Yeah, I think I would like, my wish list is so long. So I think, you know, we've spoken a lot about the importance of having almost minimal standards for the care of people with long COVID and other post-infectious conditions. And that would really mean everyone has access, even if it's just virtual, to a multidisciplinary care team and access to peer support. And the way that this would work is that, you know, everyone gets, you know, appropriately screened for, you know, post-exertional malaise, for POTS. They are treated with on-label treatments for POTS. They are treated with off-label treatments with a really flexible and sort of almost experimental, you know, mindset to be able to support the individual. And then those people are funneled into these big R, you know, adaptive clinical trial platforms. And so, you know, trials like the RECLAIM trial would be super active in testing all of these new and exciting medications that are coming down the line. So like that's a big wish list, but I do think that it's feasible and that it's not that expensive. It's cheap and cheerful and possible. And this is probably the way that we're going to influence our, you know, colleagues in primary care to be able to provide excellent support for people with long COVID who will learn from what these recommendations are coming from specialized clinics.
Thank you. So that is our wish list. I do want to thank all of our panelists for participating today. Thanks for an excellent discussion. Thanks all of you for joining up. And we're going to give you 5 minutes back, I think, and end this session and move on. Thank you very much.